They might be trying, but their hip might not be mobile enough for them to do that. So they're sitting there like, what is going on? They're getting frustrated.
We are back with episode 16 of the BVSA Sports Show. Thank you guys so much for tuning in again. This week, again, like we talked to Joe and I about last week, we are switching it up a little bit, coming into things, and we are excited to welcome back Verge to the show and welcome Nick Savali for the first time. And again, welcome back Frank and Frank Rampin, managing partner at the facility here. So we are really excited to talk today. We talk about things all the time that we'd love to have a camera on us 24/7 in here. You know, because we're in here all day long when kids are at school and it's tough, and you know we're getting business stuff done, but we can't not talk about things that come up that we see that we want to work on. And so we are excited to finally bring on Nick, who you're a doctor like 2 times over.
Doctor of physical therapy.
Doctor of physical therapy. Okay, doctor of physical more. Yeah. Yep. So that's all. Okay. So we're bringing on a doctor of physical therapy, trying to up the game here a little bit. And little teaser, if you're here, we will be working Bobby Valentine into some of these segments coming forward. So more on that.
When?
Stay tuned. When? There he goes. There he goes. A little more of a hint there. So we'll get to that at another time. So today, we have Nick Savali on, and we were talking, going back to what we were talking about last week on Mohegan Sun. One of my favorite guys there was Chris Wojak from Yale, talking pitching, and it kind of goes into the first topic that we want to get into here is, you know, starting the program early, you know, and getting going. So where are you at on that, and when guys should be throwing and when they shouldn't be throwing, and how to get your program going? What are you doing there?
Yeah, it's something that people take a look at major league players and they say, that's not me, I'm only 12, I don't need to start that early. Major league guys start throwing December, January to get ready for the season. And that's really when I think people should be starting around, no matter what age you are. Because it doesn't matter if you're throwing 98, it matters what kind of effort you're putting into it. So if you're trying to put in 100% effort by March 15th when your middle school or high school season starts, you need to ramp up to that, and it's the same exact process as a major league or a professional athlete. So I think a lot of times people just see young kids throwing at a lighter pace and they say, they'll warm up for a couple weeks, they'll be fine. But there's a lot of changes the body has to go through to get ready for the season. So one of the main points I try to drive across is that you need to start throwing early, so you're not trying to go 0 to 60 in a couple weeks. And there's a lot of different topics of conversation that go off of that, whether it's how your muscles respond to it, mentally, are you ready for the season, and just building some muscle memory.
So what kind of a throwing program should young players be on at that point, like 10 to 12 years old? You're saying, I agree, everybody should be starting early, they should build up. I mean, like I was in Japan, those guys never stopped throwing from the time they were little kids. When does a little leaguer, 10 to 12 or 8 to 12, start throwing, and what do they do?
If I'm running a team and I'm instructing kids right about after Christmas time, you know, that Christmas to New Year's break is the perfect time to just get the arms starting loosening up. And it doesn't even have to be getting out on a field. It could be throwing into a net, into a wall, into a fence. And really those first few weeks are more 10, 15, 20, maybe to 45 feet, very light tossing. And the problem that people have with starting that is it's extremely boring. No one wants to do it, but it's extremely important to building that up. And it's the same way a runner would prepare for a marathon. They'd start at half a mile, 1 mile, and build up. So it's very light throwing. A lot of it's stationary, working on rotation, working on your arm slot, making sure you don't go into the season realizing, I didn't know my back was tight until 2 weeks before the season. Now you're going to find that stuff out early. You go see a PT for a couple days, you get it figured out before it's a problem. And that gives you an idea of what to expect in the coming 2 months.
How do you feel about people never taking time off then?
That's a great question. I do think there is a need for time off. So fall seasons, it depends on what other sports you're playing. So I still fully encourage up to the age of maybe junior year in high school for kids to be playing multiple sports. Just the wear and tear on the body, the asymmetries you create of doing the same thing year long, and it's not just baseball, it's any sport. That is something that causes you to start breaking down at 22 instead of 32. Or even into college, you see that with a lot of kids. A lot of guys who come from the South who are playing 50 high school games, 50 summer games, they're up to almost as many games as major leaguers. They're guys who scouts even look at and say, hey, we might not want to sign this guy into his late 30s. He's went through a whole season when he was 14 all the way up till now. So you have to break it up. And as far as taking a break from fall ball, when does that usually end? October or
End of
November?
October, early November.
Yeah.
I'm probably not touching a ball between then and right before Christmas. So a
Even
couple
though
months.
you could potentially just look at it as buildup of conditioning. That Bryce Harper's
Yes.
a perfect example. Yeah, he just blew out his arm and had Tommy John
Right.
in what now 30-year-old season coming up, or 31-year-old season.
Yep.
But in reality, his body has been conditioned since he was a kid
Oh, yeah.
to withstand a full season.
Right, and so his mileage starts at probably age 13, where he's throwing 90 something in middle school or whatever
At 9
it
years
was.
old, he's playing
Yeah,
with 13-year-olds.
and it will take a toll. You see all the benefits of it, but not every person out there is going to be Bryce Harper and sign that $9 million and get all the best trainers in the world and paid to recover.
Totally.
But to your point, I do think it's very important for you to do something baseball related. I'm not saying just don't do anything baseball at all or stop working out. It just specifically for throwing. I think that's when you need to take a break and give your arm a little bit
And
of a
even
rest.
if it's not a normal arm slot, you're playing around, you're having fun, you're messing around.
Oh yeah, that's fine. Like if you're just throwing a football with
you're
friends,
saying
that's
formally
throwing
throwing.
bullpens and there's got to be some time off for that. But yeah, I'm not saying
Don't play catch.
be in a sling for
Yeah.
3 months.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't play catch. Don't go take
Go to
grounders
football.
if you're an infielder. At the
totally
same time
do
as
that
pitching.
stuff. Yeah, and that's exactly that multi-sport mentality too. Like go play football with your friends, go swimming, use your arm in other ways. Just don't keep throwing bullpens until January and then start it all up again. Yeah, essentially.
And that
Yeah.
kind of goes back to thinking about Wojak, and he's of that mindset. They just throw. They always throw. Same thing. I think they were go back to they were throwing off the mound during those October sessions, but he definitely wanted them throwing 3 or 4 days a week, along with their lifting and whatnot. And one thing that he said that we heard a lot actually before he went to the event was when it comes to pitching, a lot of it's opinion based. When it comes to like throwing and like it's all like you said, there's different perspectives. What are some things we can do to start measuring the body so that the body can tell us, oh, he's ready to do this, he's not ready to do this? Is there anything that you're seeing there, like, just quick, simple movements that they could do so that kids know, like, yeah, we can actually put a kid, run a kid through something,
Right.
and they know I'm prepared to go today.
Yeah, the shorter answer is go through every joint in the body and say, how does this compare to what that joint is supposed to look like? And that's something we're trying to do with our screens, and that's what a physical therapy evaluation would entail. And I even have a few kids now who come in and they don't have any pain, but they know by the end of the season they're starting to wear down. So they say, what can I do? And you go and you look at the ankles, the knees, the hips. A lot of times it's the hips where one side of rotation is tighter than the other, and that's because it's a very asymmetrical unilateral sport. You're always rotating one way unless you're a switch hitter. That affects your momentum from the feet all the way up through the arm slots. So if you have a limitation at the hip, it's like any other machine. The other parts and the other joints are going to have to make up for that. So one of the biggest things we can do is just measure all these different joints and say, you are limited here, you're fine there, let's focus on this. So with a good amount of my off-season baseball guys, Gio included, it's not actually a spot that's bothering them. It's somewhere else that's affecting their arm slot or why they're not getting velocity. And that's as simple as you talk to a physical therapist or you talk to a really good personal trainer and they notice that. Say, hey, stretch out your pecs more or stretch out your lateral hip muscles and problem solved, instead of trying to bear through it and get some kind of injury in mid-May.
Well, then, so how you teach kids, or how have you done in your experience, teach kids how to know the difference between soreness and like pain or injury?
Yeah, that's a very tough one because honestly, they're going to lie to you. In a lot of cases, it's a young kid who wants to play and they're going to say, no, it's fine, I'm just a little sore. And I know that because I did it myself. And I know all my teammates who did it too. I think the conversation about what an injury is has to take place. If you go to somebody because you're sore, you can't have the feeling like you're going to lose your spot in the team or you're going to get pushed to the end of the bench. And that's something that starts with the coaching. And maybe it's something that everyone feels like it's kind of understood, but it probably needs to be vocalized more, is that just because you're sore, it doesn't mean you're going to be seen a different way. You have to talk to people, and we have to take care of these kind of things earlier. So, case in point, my junior year in high school, it's a very important year for scouting and things. I pretty much never mentioned any type of injury, and that carried over to the fall, and that carried over to senior season, and then shoulder stuff comes up. So, so what was your original question?
How to teach somebody how to identify the soreness versus injury, and I'll double down on why is because my whole thing, my entire career, similar to what you were saying, was, and I did not play, I had no business being on the college roster, but if I was sore, I'm going to go through the actions I'm supposed to take.
Right.
But being able to identify injury and know all right, time to shut it down, time to go talk to someone, time to go. It took experience in turn actually having conversations to figure that out.
Right.
Well, I think you just nailed it, right? Yeah. You just nailed it. And it comes back to things in baseball, and we always talk about why we love coaching here is it relates to just life in general, how so many things come down to communication and being able to communicate properly.
A couple comments on what you just said, Nick. I mean, the imbalance of the sides of taking all those swings or throws one way or the other. When we were in Japan, part of their weekly regimen was pitchers would throw with their opposite sides, and hitters would take a lot of swings, not necessarily in the cage, but they would take lots of swings their other way. Absolutely. Just to balance it out. And now you talk about all these things that we do and teach our kids, all the rotational movements to throw and to hit that we teach to be successful as a hitter, as a baseball player. There's so many times that we have these kids in the cage on the field and they can't perform what we're asking them to perform physically. And to be evaluated, like you say, I'm trying to get this kid to get this separation and taking them through all the mechanics and doing all these drills where their bodies just aren't capable of doing it. And to be able to have them evaluated to see what's going on, and then to have them, there's a question coming, by the way, to have them start a regimen that will allow them to do that is something that's really important. And I just want to plug us. We have that in this building. We have all the capabilities to make your players that much better, that we have the facility, we have the cages, we have the instruction, we have evolution downstairs, we have the gym, we have all the tools necessary for our players to rise to that level and to overcome the obstacles of not being able to perform the things that we need them to perform to be successful. So when you do an evaluation, how young should you do an evaluation on some of these players to determine that their bodies aren't capable of doing what we're asking them to do, and put them on a regimen, and what kind of regimen you could put them on so that they can get a jump start and be ahead of everybody else?
Yeah, it starts as young as 8 or 9. I mean, any younger than that, that's such rapid growth that a problem you have in March could be gone by April. It's just the way your body's growing. But I even have a couple kids around that age coming in for PT right now, and we're talking about stretching out the hips or making sure these 3 stretches need to be a part of your day, 5 days a week. Very simple stuff, and that helps gets reinsured by the parents saying, keeping them on track. But it's all very simple things, and I think one of the misnomers is that people figure it's going to take hours each night going through these exercises. No, it's 2 minutes here, 2 minutes there, quick reminders, and you go through the day, and by the end of the day, instead of being really tight in your hip, you can be a little bit more symmetrical to the other side, and you amplify that times a couple months, and you're starting the season symmetrical versus going in almost waiting for an injury to happen. So 8, 9 years old, it's especially important between those phases where you're growing the most, so 13 through 17, I guess, because your body's always changing. Something that was fine last year could be totally different. Your shin bones might have grown 4 inches, but the muscles haven't reached that amount of stretch. If you have some tight Achilles and calves, it's going to affect your running, your throwing, especially your pitching if that's your plant foot. And there's so many things that we could talk about for hours that it affects. And to circle back to your question about soreness versus pain, is soreness something that happens once or twice and it's different areas, and I squatted so my glutes are sore, I threw a lot so my shoulder's a little sore, or is it something that's recurring? Is it sharp pain? Is it recurring? Is it always the same spot? Is it every day? That is injury related.
I have it every day.
Yeah.
A lot of places too. It just keeps going.
And so maybe you need a quick screen and we do some testing.
I remember Willie Olette, who was a player here, then coach here, and he sitting in high school talking about how he would sit in class, and the next day after he pitched, his elbow was just throbbing in class.
Mm-hmm.
And that was just what they did. He just kept pitching. He ended up breaking his back and pitching.
Yeah, and I think a really important message that you just said, that everybody really needs to hear that. You said, and I'm a father of 2 baseball players, there's a lot involved to being good and playing at a high level, but you said it only takes a couple of minutes a day to perform some of these exercises. Only takes a couple minutes a day that will help you prevent your injuries, help you perform at a higher level, and we as coaches and parents, we need to stay on that. It's not that long of a commitment. I know our lives are so busy. These kids do so many things throughout the course of their day, weeks, months, whatever, but to spend those extra few minutes is really beneficial.
Yeah, and that example you just gave, I don't know exactly what was going on, but if it was a forearm flexor tightness type of thing, you could be sitting in class and just massaging your arm. No one's even going to know you're doing it. So you imagine 5 minutes every class, 9 classes, it's 45 minutes of treatment you can give yourself. It's just an easy thing. And all it takes is one sentence like, hey, this arm is so much tighter than this one. We tested that by checking your wrist extension. You need to do some work on it. So while you're sitting in class, stretch your forearm, work on it. And it could be applied to the pecs or the glutes. Use a tennis ball, massage it out.
Rub it. Rub it.
I aced my chemistry exam and I fixed my arm.
It's all at the same time.
Yeah, and and the problem is everyone wants to know, like, what are the 3 best things for baseball players? It doesn't work that way. It's what is the 3 best things for your son or daughter or you. It's so different in every way that we are different in personality. That is maximized tenfold with our bodies. So I can't just say, hey, all the 9-year-olds do these stretches. So it is tricky, and it's unfortunate that isn't the answer. But like everything else, there's nuance to it, and that's why it's so important to take care of yourself or your son or daughter, because their situation is going to be different from every single one of their teammates.
Yep. Well, on that, talking about plugging, right now we are offering free screenings with you, Nick. What are the ages for that? Can you remind us and talk about it and let everybody know exactly what we're doing?
Really, any age, anyone who's playing competitively, I'd recommend, if someone's playing especially more than one season a year of baseball or, any sport really, the idea is just getting out there how easy it is to maintenance things, like a car, like a house, before they break, before they get messed up. And just planting that seed is very important in making sure that you're not going through your high school years always climbing up a hill battle with injuries, and just making them have an easier life, not having to deal with all that. That's part of why I do this job, because I went through that. Amen. And it's not fun.
Amen.
How do we sign up for those free evals?
So you can sign up for those free evals on our website. It's on a couple different pages, on the BBT page, on the Evolution page. It's also on our social medias that they'll be going out. Or you can just, thank Frank, because we're plugging all day here. We have our branded app that you can go download through the App Store. You can look up the BVSA app. Once you get in there, you create your account, and you register right through self-service. And Nick's classes are there. You can go purchase the package, but it's a free charge, so just run through it. Won't ask you for credit card information. You purchase that package, and you go through. You pick one of the dates we have available on the calendar there, and then you just drop in for one of those classes. And those are Mondays.
Right now they're set up Mondays at 5.
Mondays at
5 to 5:40.
Yeah.
It doesn't take that long, and it could be 5-10 minutes. If there's something that's serious going on that we really need to intervene, there would be a recommendation for a physical therapy evaluation. In most cases, it's just going to be, hey, you're a little tight here, add this stretch in, give me your email, I'll send you some stuff. And then there are some cases where we catch something early and we prevent it from being an issue later on.
That's awesome. So anyone as young as 8 or 9, is that too young for these?
Yeah, no.
Anybody that has something that feels a little bit off that just wants to get checked out, it's a free session for them to come get checked out.
Right.
Awesome. Cool. Very, very cool. So there were a couple of things we wanted to talk about today, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to talk about, this is an age-old thing that comes up with us all the time, and it's changing, and we're getting new information, so I'd love to hear your perspective on it, Nick. And that's icing versus not icing, and how that plays a part in what we do here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, part of this comes from personal experience and what's worked for me. So I'm not claiming this as a black and white answer to everything, but in my experience, I've used ice almost never in recovery, and this is a non-injury situation. So if you're coming off a regular game or a regular start as a pitcher and you feel fine, you're just a little sore, it's a normal kind of feeling, I almost never ice. And the reason for that is our body's immune system is set up very specifically. The job of your body is to send nutrients, proteins, calcium, everything to your shoulder, to your elbow, to everything that just worked. If you throw ice on it and make your arm immobile for a long period of time, especially right after your start, you are decreasing blood flow to that area. You're limiting yourself with oxygen, protein, all those nice things that are going to help you recover. And on top of that, you come out of it with a very stiff arm. And most people don't like ice anyway. But there are times when it can be useful. And like I said, this is not a black and white, never do it type of situation. But I've personally found that I recover a lot quicker. The science behind it makes sense. And everything we know about how your body responds to stresses like that is a built-in system that why would we mess with something that already is designed to do exactly what we want it to do? If you're comparing that to a sprained ankle, when your ankle blows up and it's huge and swollen, yes, that helps to control the swelling to the point where it's not making you immobile. That's a little bit of a different scenario. So if you get drilled by a pitch in your shoulder, yeah, throw some ice on it if it helps null the pain a little bit and prevent swelling. But when we're just talking daily performance, doing a lot of swinging, a lot of throwing, even the ice baths too, I used to do them all the time. And I wish I could go back and see what it was like if I didn't do them, because everything I've learned and everything I've experienced since then has just said, why are we messing with a perfect system that already knows how to take care of itself?
What about running to break down the lactic acid?
Running is I like running, cycling, swimming, anything that keeps your arm moving and increases that blood flow, which is kind of the funny opposition is we want blood flow. And everyone always encourages run after your start, but then those same people say ice. It's kind of like the opposite thing. We want blood flow. We want your body to work to deliver everything it's supposed to deliver to that part that needs it.
So here's what I've heard. We have to try to understand it is that it does decrease blood flow. We knew that, right? So that's why you kind of go 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off to negate the blood flow so that it rushes back, to negate the blood flow so that it rushes back. Is there anything there?
There's some science behind that too, and a lot of times it's I wouldn't say it's inconclusive, but there are ways you can set up studies that kind of influence the answer you want to get. And we'd have to talk about specific ones, but there's a lot of benefit to blood flow restriction therapy, and you'll see that kind of creep up, especially over the next few years, I think, where you basically clamp like a blood pressure cuff and limit blood flow, and then you work out and then it comes rushing back. So there are some benefits to that. But if you are talking about the average 10-year-old who just needs a simple rule to follow, and they don't have a team of therapists or trainers working on all this very specific stuff, my answer would be hold off on the ice unless it's something different, unless there's a new pain, unless there's swelling and you're not sure what to do about it and you're going to consult a doctor. There's a funny story about why icing was kind of made popular. It has to do with somebody's arm getting chopped off by a train, and the doctor reattached it, and they had froze it in ice so that it preserved it. And later in life, that doctor says, I have no idea why people think that a sore shoulder requires the same thing. That was for saving an amputated arm. So
Did he pitch again?
Yeah. He wasn't a baseball athlete, but he maybe, I don't know. So the point is, we've developed this whole theory of ice after you throw based on something that had nothing to do, and that doctor who performed that and made it all famous is like, this has nothing to do with what I was doing. So it's interesting when you think about it that way, and you say, why are we doing this?
Yeah.
Why is that the case?
So if it's not ice, so what else can you be doing for like recovery purposes in season? Should you be going to see a physical therapist during your season?
Do you throw more?
Is that recovery? You throw, like, what do you?
I do find that light throwing at 25 to 40% can be really helpful. And the day after I'll throw a bullpen, I'll just go to the net, maybe 30 to 60 throws, very light, just getting the motion of the body, running, swimming, any type of dynamic movements, the warm-ups you guys do before you're throwing and before you're hitting, that's all great. It's, in a simple answer, is just keep the arm moving and don't let it sit there. You could do some light strengthening, which would involve some rotator cuff strengthening with bands, but everything that day after or 2 days after is very much light. It's a third of what you would do for the weight or the resistance you normally use, and it's just very gentle.
And this is all levels you're talking?
All levels, yeah. And muscles, whether you're a major league starter or an 8-year-old, generally respond the same to a percentage of what their maximum force is. So if you're throwing your maximum force at 8 years old, your body's not going to be all that different from a 25-year-old all-star closer who's doing the same thing. So the response can be very similar. You don't have to wait until you're throwing 90 plus to treat your arm nice. You can do it now.
Makes sense. And we talk a lot about arms, right? But we also here talk about the sequence and the kinetic chain and how important it is to work from the ground up and use the ground. Where else, like hip mobility things, kind of working down the chain? Is there other things that should be also worked into those?
Probably the next most important thing is hip mobility. And everything that you can transfer from your lower half to your upper half comes through the hips and the core. So if you don't have hip mobility, and this is something we've talked about a lot, that's going to affect what you can physically do on the field. So if we're trying to tell an athlete, hey, get lower when you pivot and throw that ball from shortstop position to second base, they might be trying, but their hip might not be mobile enough for them to do that. So they're sitting there like, what is going on? They're getting frustrated. And if you realize that you don't have that hip internal rotation to do it, that you add some stretches in, you work on it, takes a few weeks, but now you get that mobility and you can perform that motion that you had trouble performing before. But core strength is equally important because that's what's going to help deliver that momentum from your legs up to the arm. So a lot of times when I get kids coming in, the first thing we do before we even touch the arm is, hey, your hips are really tight. Let's work on that first. Then we can start throwing, because if you start throwing now, you're going to create bad habits.
And I've seen that specifically with some of my guys that you work with, and you do that eval and you do your work with them, and we get back into what we're doing, and there's a easily visible, significant difference in the way their explosiveness and their rotational movements.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's really about flexibility, and you're starting to see it more in the majors. Guys like Mookie Betts, even Yelich a couple of years ago, they're kind of thin and lanky guys. They don't look like they're going to hit the ball 470 feet, but they can because they have perfect mechanics, and their mobility is what gets them there. Pedro Martinez, perfect example. They don't do that if they have tight hips. It's as simple as that. So almost equally important as shoulder mobility and all that stuff we focus on up here is what's going on in the midsection.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. Frank, Verge, thank you guys so much. This
that's awesome, Nick.
Thank you.
Appreciate
really,
that, brother.
Just again, ode to having you and Brian Wolf and Mike Studi and Evolution in the gym. It's just been so fun to, again, going on 17 years. I know I say this all the time. I sound like a broken record, but for us to go from Camp Avenue to here we are, we got doctors in our building now that we're learning from every day and able to elevate what we do to bring to. It's cool. It's cool to just keep seeing this thing come full circle, and for you to go through an injury and then drive you, to learn about these things and now redeliver it to kids. That's what we do. I have a college recruiting company. I've never played a day in college. I barely played in high school. I did it because nobody taught me, and kids needed information, right? It's just we're here to do it, and it's exciting and fun. And I'm just thank you for coming on. And if you're still here after 30 minutes, whatever it is, thank you. Thank you so much for being here and being one of our I think we have, I want to say 19 to 20 people who loyally watch you on YouTube the whole longs, right? So thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. That number at 20 is going to grow, Frank. I'm growing that number. We're growing it. Nick, you're a huge part of growing it. Verge. Joe's been back there today. Joe's been the producer. We usually don't have this, but he's here. So thank you guys so much again. Like, comment, subscribe, save, wherever you are. TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, What else we got? Google, Yelp, all of it. Thank you guys so much for coming down. Can't wait to share this all with you. And see you guys next time.
Birch, nice hat.